There are countless places around the world believed to be haunted, and with a simple Google search, you'll bring up endless locations filled with hauntings, sightings, and paranormal activity. And more now than ever, you'll find countless videos of haunted locations, ghosts caught on camera, paranormal investigations, to things that just can't be explained. But there's one place slightly more stranger than many of those other places that I researched. Why? Because most places, towns, or cities had maybe 1, 2, sometimes 3 locations that were haunted or experienced something out of the ordinary. But this city, this small town city, had 7 haunted places. Welcome to California. It's sunny, beautiful, there's endless sights to see, one of the biggest tourist states in America. There's beaches, warm weather, beautiful mountains, but just travel to Southern California, about 70 miles south from Los Angeles, and you'll find a small city with a population of approximately 71,000 called Redlands.
Redlands is pretty close-knit. Everybody knows everybody. You run into the same people, even downtown, the grocery store. It's not a big city. You can drive through the whole city in 15 minutes. It's that small. Neighbors help out each other. I like it here.
There used to be a lot of old money here in Redlands, a lot of older people, and then their generations. It used to be a very generational town, and now you're seeing a lot more other cultures and other families and other people from other areas coming in.
I always heard that Redlands was expensive to live, like to buy a home and stuff like that. I've always heard that since I was younger. I heard that's still the case today. I heard that the University of Redlands is a very expensive college to go to. I've always heard that.
The store called Gerard's is right down the street from me. That's also been passed down in the families. They have a lot of old newspaper clippings, pictures from back in the 40s, that from what it looked like before. I love that part of Redlands. Nothing's ever really changed. Most of the vintage homes here that are on the tours, they have vintage home tours once a year, usually around this time in October. You can't change those homes unless you get permission from this city. You can't change the character of the house. So they all stayed the same for hundreds of years. They look the same. Just get repainted and touched up.
We used to have a joke, all of us teenagers, that 9 o'clock at night, Redlands would roll up the sidewalks and it was Deadlands. That's what we used to call it. It's just Deadlands. There was absolutely nothing to do. Nothing.
The mall used to be open, and I remember an arcade being in there. And back in the 80s, we would go in there and we look for all the quarters and stuff like that from our parents, and then run over there to the arcade. And but they closed the mall, of course, and then there was some businesses, they kind of like dwindled off, and then the mall got smaller and smaller.
The smell of Redlands, you could be coming home from LA, Riverside, San Bernardino, and on the 10 freeway, right about Mountain View, Loma Linda area, it would hit you. It was just a wall of orange blossoms. You could just smell it. And everybody had bee guts on their windshields because there was just bees and orange blossoms, and great memories from when I was a kid.
I remember seeing the Reverend Jesse Jackson when he went for president. I don't remember what year it was. He visited Redlands. I remember I actually shook his hand over there.
Historically, Redlands had been used to film different movies throughout the time because of just how amazing these houses are, very Victorian and, older kind of creepier houses set back from the road with, the trees and the orange groves around it and stuff. So they, it's kind of a creepy thing. And we were even mentioned in Poltergeist, which is a film from 1981. So,
there's a lot of historical areas. It's a very historical city, It's been around for a long time. So I think we'd have to investigate who founded this place, who used to live here, and what they were involved in, And when you, say you heard the stories that people use Ouija boards and bad things happen. Well, you invite those beings, those unseen beings, and they like to basically fool around with people, and they like to cause mischief and fear and all that. And then you got to remember to differentiate these beings. I'm talking about between them and ghosts. Ghosts is probably a natural phenomenon. but these beings are very real. They're very real, and when you delve into that kind of stuff, it just opens up a whole can of worms.
Redlands has many schools that rank high in its school district. That's no mystery. But one Redlands school has the distinct pleasure of being haunted. At least that's what some Redlands residents believe. Welcome to Mariposa Elementary.
Actually, my grandson went to that school, and one day he was sick, and I had to pick him up at the nurse's office, or the front office, and I asked about the little boy that haunts that place. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Actually, they all got hush-hush about it. I assumed they didn't want me to talk about it with kids around. But people I've talked to in the past said that a little boy got ran over by a car and that he knocks back on the wall. And that's all I know about it. But when my grandson was there, I asked about it. They wouldn't talk about it. It's funny about Redlands. Some of the people want to talk all about it, and then some people dismiss it right away.
We went to Mariposa Elementary. Everybody says at the stroke of midnight, if you knock on the office door, the little boy that supposedly died there knocks back. There was a sound. There was, and all of us girls, go screaming off, giggling and screaming. I don't even know how we got there. We must have walked. It's midnight. There was that. Sometimes being, especially in high school, being in the orange groves late at night, you could hear things. What they were, I don't know. It was dark. We all had our theories of what they were, but you could hear things like whispering. It maybe was a breeze blowing through the trees. I don't know. You find a balance when you're a kid with these myths between it's really happening and it's a myth, or explaining it away, and then sometimes something really does happen.
Death happens all around the world all the time. People die for many reasons that range from natural to accidental. But there is no consensus among scientists or medical professionals that a part of you is left behind. Your spirit, some might call it, or maybe an energy that is left to roam and stay here with the living. These ideas are largely considered to be false due to no actual evidence, but on the other hand, there are people who believe the contrary. They may see something or hear something, and sometimes it can't be explained by those same professionals we look to for answers. And with that, there's also no evidence to prove these people are wrong. Mariposa Elementary was built in 1965, and since being founded, it's continued to be a thriving school for the residents of Redlands. But one tragic incident cast what seems to be an eternal dark shadow on Mariposa's reputation, one that the elementary school has been unable to shake. Redlands Police Department reported to the Los Angeles Times of a young boy riding his bike near Mariposa Elementary when a driver in a pickup truck struck the boy. Teachers at Mariposa Elementary responded to the accident and ushered him to an ambulance. It was at that hospital that the boy was pronounced dead. Just 3 miles away is Redlands' most prided park. Its large acreage includes an outdoor amphitheater that seats 400 plus, a historical carriage house from the 1800s, and plenty of orange trees. It also has a few horror stories to go with it. Welcome to Prospect Park.
Prospect Park, I believe in the 60s, there was a girl that was murdered. She was walking home through the orange groves. Someone had seen her on the stage on the amphitheater and kind of stalked her. So he murdered her, and I heard that he left her body underneath the stage so people see a little girl on the stage. And I've never witnessed that, but I've done investigations in Prospect Park, and the people I'm with see things there.
I've heard stories about Prospect Park in particular about that. They would do animal sacrifices was the thing that they would do up there.
Prospect Park. So that's been rumored for a long time. I heard satanic things were done there. There's ghosts, there's, spirits, little boys, different animals, things like that. Nothing too nefarious, but everybody's always talked about it, probably just because the way that it's situated, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard about Prospect Park and all the things that have gone on there, and all the paranormal activity that happens there. Again, I haven't ventured out, but I have heard, there's a number of people in our group that have gone out there and investigated Prospect Park during the nights, and say that there's all kinds of crazy things that take place there and happen there. There's a ton of history there, whether whether it's been stories of devil worshiping and satanic stuff, or just paranormal activity that's happened there. There's lots of stories of people growing up that spent time in Prospect Park, in the orange groves, and have seen all kinds of crazy things that have happened there.
From what I heard, and I believe, if memory serves, I actually heard this firsthand, somebody that found it. It was some type of like a pentagram or something that people had made in rocks, so they attributed satanic activity to it. Because I personally heard firsthand that somebody found a pentagram, which is actually magic, not really attributed to Satanism, but just weird stuff, formations and stuff with rocks. I think it could have went back to that, and then someone starts the rumor, or there could have been maybe a coven of witches up there and sacrificing or something. I have no idea. I believe somebody was murdered very close to that proximity. It was a young girl, I believe.
Prospect Park has a wonderful story behind its onset. It also has a few stories that have made many paranormal investigators trek to the park and look for evidence of its apparent hauntings. Because of its history of activity throughout its existence, Prospect Park has been associated with more than a few horror stories, and upon doing some research, there is one story that is consistent with the truth and the stories that have been told throughout the years. The story goes, sometime in the late 60s, an 11-year-old girl was walking home from Kingsbury Elementary. On her way there, she decided to take a shortcut by way of orange groves, which Redlands was known for. This was just a few blocks from Prospect Park, and somewhere between the orange groves and the park is when young Leanne was abducted. At the time, neighbors reported hearing screams coming from the orange groves, but those neighbors didn't report it until the following day. The police found her shoes and socks folded neatly in the orange groves, which led people to believe that's where she was abducted. Not long after, Leanne's body was discovered laying on the stage in Prospect Park. She was placed on her side in fetal position with her hands under her head. Her eyeballs had been removed. 3 miles from Prospect Park is one of Redlands' oldest homes. Elegance on site and dubbed America's favorite Victorian house, this famous home is more than just beautiful design and structure. It's home to one of Redlands' oldest haunting stories. Welcome to Mory Mansion.
So Mory Mansion, I really don't know that much history on it, other than I believe it was like a husband and wife that had lived there originally, and it's somehow there was a tragic end there. I think maybe the wife or the husband had gotten ill, something. But most of these old houses, they have tragic beginnings. I know that it's a private residence to this day. I think they made it into a bed and breakfast for a while, and now it's a private residence, but didn't really hit my radar when I was growing up until I was there.
Mory Mansion is, now I know somebody personally who actually babysitted in Mory Mansion, and they saw a ghost, actually saw one.
Is there a story behind that, or do you know?
Well, I believe the owner who built the house, his wife died, and she's the one that haunts the home there.
I was there, I want to say it was 1993 or 94. We were doing a charity event. I was asked to come along and help with like service and things like that, because after the dinner was over, we had a chance to tour the house. And I had always been to Kimberly Crest as a little girl, just on the regular tours, part of Girl Scouts, etc. So I jumped at the chance to check out another mansion in Redlands. And so I do remember not a whole lot about that evening, or about the house itself. I remember the kitchen was like this really vibrant black and white tile. I remember a really cool fireplace that had this picture above it that I had growing up in my nursery, and it was in my aunt's nursery, my mother's nursery, my grandmother's nursery, and I thought how strange that was because I had never seen that painting before, but there it was above the mantle in this house. So it's time for our tour, and don't, like I said, remember much about the downstairs of the house. We go upstairs. There's this corner room. It was just this very gaudy Victorian pink. I remember it was just like wall-to-wall pink, everything. Across the hall from that and adjacent was this other small room, and since I had lagged behind in the group, I was first to go into this room that I remember being a very dark blue. And I walked in and felt like the walls were caving in on me. They were just shrinking and shrinking. I had like tunnel vision. I couldn't breathe. There was this very strong odor. It was so completely disorienting. I felt like the ground was moving underneath me. These walls were coming in. I started to panic a little bit, thinking something was wrong with me. Physically, I needed to back out of this room. And so everybody had come up behind me. They walked into the room. I kind of wove backwards through them, got outside, and was immediately recovering. I was recovering that fast from being in that room. I had head-to-toe goosebumps. The sensation of it was like a vacuum pulling the air out of me. I couldn't breathe, and everything was closing in. So as soon as I backed out of that room, one by one, my physical ailments were getting better. And that was way back when I smoked. Miss those days sometimes. Went straight downstairs, went outside, stood on the porch with the wicker furniture. And I think they still have wicker furniture to this day. And just had to have a cigarette to calm down, and didn't know what had happened to me, but I had never experienced anything like that. It was not a gradual process. It was immediate. I stepped into the room, and it closed in on me. And I didn't know what I had just experienced, and I didn't talk about it. Thinking about it as the years went by, I had another experience, and this time it wasn't, something moving or a ghost, or it was the whole house was speaking. And I don't know what happened in this room. I have no idea. But years later, with the invention of Google, I decided I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna look up, excuse me, Mory Mansion, and see if anybody else has had this, or maybe even look at pictures of the place. And I type in Mory Mansion. First thing that pops up: haunted Redlands Blue Room. And I felt validated, and it was a huge relief because I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dehydrated that night. Something happened. Something tangible happened to me in that room, and I wasn't alone because here's the internet saying it 20 years later, 25 years later. Back then, how I perceived it was, yes, sir, I'm getting out. Whether that was me interpreting that as my own voice, or if it was just this huge energy in the house telling me that, and that is what I picked up on, that I needed to leave in order to get better. Every experience, I'm sure, for people is different. Some people smell things, they hear music, they get very clear images in their heads. That's great. I feel energies. And then I can hear things, and then these little images start popping into my head, and I'm supposed to sit there and interpret them, I guess. I don't spend a lot of time doing it because, it's difficult to talk about sometimes.
Right.
Maybe we all have a sixth sense, and some people listen to it, and some people don't. Some people don't have a choice. I feel like maybe I'm one of those people that doesn't have a choice. Do I always pay attention to my intuition and my gut? No. No. But there are times where even if I want to ignore it, I can't. How would you even prove that the room closed in on me? That I heard a voice in my head shout, "Get out." That the air was taken out of my lungs. How can you prove it? You just have to trust in the individuals that are telling you about their experiences. What it was in that house, I could never tell you, even all these years later, if it was a single energy or a collective. The strength of that experience tells me it was a collective. It was multiple multiple energies, multiple things in that house. And it was like they descended. And it wasn't just the chills this time. It wasn't just a little something going on in my ear. It was every single experience I could possibly have happening at once and on a grand scale.
Mory Mansion was built in 1890 by David Mory. His wife, Mrs. Mory, who owned orange trees, sold them in 1889, and together they used $15,000 to create their dream home. This resulted in a 4,800 square footage home with 20 rooms and 96 windows, giving each room a view of the outside. But the house was only lived in by the Morys for about 11 years. Mrs. Mory became ill with acute gastroenteritis and died in 1901 at the age of 60. Mr. Mory, distraught over his wife's death, left Redlands for San Diego, where only 1 year later he committed suicide by a gunshot wound. Both Mr. and Mrs. Mory are buried at Hillside Cemetery in Redlands. The story goes that Mory Mansion is haunted by the ghost of Sarah Mory. More specifically, she is rumored to be seen and felt in a room in the mansion known as the Blue Room, the same room she took her last breath. One iconic home stands out from all the others here in Redlands. With acres of Italian Renaissance-styled gardens, it's no surprise that this Victorian home is a popular tourist attraction. Welcome to Kimberly Crest.
It most definitely looks haunted to me, but nobody there will talk about it. And no one's really reported any hauntings there, so I don't know if that one's haunted. I would love to do a paranormal investigation there.
So I'm not sure what I've heard about Kimberly Crest, but I've been there bunches and bunches of times. It's absolutely gorgeous. I was in a wedding there. It's a beautiful house, and like I said, having these extra senses since I was a kid, never felt anything there that was negative. It was actually really peaceful when I was on the grounds and inside. Nobody's ever said, oh, Kimberly Crest. Well, it's certainly ominous when you pull up and you shoot it from the right angles, right? It looks a little scary. It looks like a lot of the mansions tucked away from everybody and everything here in town, but I never heard like, oh, anything satanic is going on there, let's have a seance there. Certainly not the infamy that the Winchester Mystery House would be, so sorry to disappoint, haven't really heard anything there, but as far as personal experience, it was a lovely house, lovely grounds.
Kimberly Crest, people get married there, I believe. That's the one kind of by San Bernardino, right? Or it's in Redlands. Oh, is it in Redlands? Okay.
Kimberly Crest is another old mansion dating back to the 1800s. Erected in 1897 for one of the pioneers of Redlands, Mrs. Cornelia A. Hill, the mansion's unique Victorian style is also one of the oldest in California. In 1905, co-founder of the Kimberly-Clark Corporation, J. Alfred Kimberly, purchased the house. Their daughter, Mary Kimberly Shirk, lived there until her death in 1979. It was then when stories began passing through Redlands of a woman in the window who is said to be the ghost of Mary Shirk, at the top floor sitting in her rocking chair. Mary Kimberly Shirk was a very respected philanthropist and served on many charitable activities. She is also credited for saving Prospect Park from being bought by a developer who had planned to get rid of it. Just a few miles away, you'll find another old home in Redlands believed to be haunted. This mansion, made of solid brick, has acquired a strong reputation of ghost activity. If you're visiting Redlands for its rich history or for its alleged haunted attractions, then look no further. Welcome to the Barton Mansion.
The Barton Mansion. Well, before it was, I believe it was owned by a physician, and in maybe the late 1800s. I'm not sure about the dates, but it was abandoned for years before. When I moved here, there was nothing there. It wasn't developed yet. It was for sale, but it was an old abandoned place. Everybody I talked to about that place, they all said it was haunted. And some people said it was homeless people living in there, and that it wasn't haunted. But I personally never went in there. But I heard a lot of stories about it, mostly some black magic was done in there. And Somebody had told me that there was a door in that house that had like the Satan's picture or Satan's outline on it, and that it was an evil place. But I didn't feel anything like that. I drove by it every day, and I never seen anything like that. So I don't know if those stories are true.
I have a friend. We're, part of this little Facebook group. That's how I met you. And I see these posts about Barton Mansion over and over. I don't really know anything about it. That's not one of the places I grew up hearing about. So he takes me there, and it was like late at night, and I didn't feel anything other than that mansion is not where it's supposed to be. It was moved. That was the only thing I could feel when I was there, was that this other place that looked deserted, and overgrown and whatnot, that's where the actual house used to be.
My experience with Barton Mansion is I live near it. So, I've walked by it. It does have a weird air to it, but I haven't been in it. I don't necessarily know the history behind it other than the paranormal activity that's been posted on social media or people have talked about. But from what I understand, it's definitely got a past and a past of some spiritual activity that goes on in the building. I know it's been renovated over the past probably 10 years or something like that. So it's changed a lot from what it used to be like. But it's always been one of those places that I've always kind of wondered, what really goes on there. And like I said, with the way that I am, I always have gotten some sort of weird feeling walking by it, and we do take walks by it all the time. So just kind of this weird building that kind of gives a creepy feeling, even still. What I remember of it when I first moved to Redlands was it was all run down and just a really crappy old house that just stood in the middle of nowhere. And that was really creepy. But to see it today and being fixed up and how it looks today, I still kind of get that feeling. And I don't necessarily think it's because of what it looked like in the past and my memory of it. It's more kind of what's there, at that place. So I haven't had any experiences there. I haven't had the opportunity to investigate it or go in and really be inside the building. But it's one of those that I've always, if I had the opportunity, of course I would. It's close.
Barton Mansion is another historic home. In fact, it's the first fired brick house built in Redlands. It was erected in 1867 by Dr. Benjamin Barton, and throughout the years the home went through several major remodels. There was a separate kitchen building that is said to be used as a jail because of its barred windows. But the mansion hasn't always been so aesthetically pleasing, and that's one reason it's believed to be haunted. Although it seems like no one Redlands resident can agree exactly what or why this spooky mansion is haunted, it does seem to have a few good stories, and it does continue to be a place of interest for many ghost hunters. Cemeteries are eerie by design, and once you step foot in one, there's not much work and imagination needs to conjure up just about any ghostly scenario. But this cemetery has been around just as long as the city of Redlands. Welcome to Hillside Cemetery.
I actually heard it was here in this cemetery that they used to do animal sacrifices here. One of the tours I took in this park, they actually talk about it on the tour. They find little animal bones in peculiar ranges around here. So I don't know if they still practice that. I've never seen it, so I don't think there is. Although, I don't live far from here, I do hear people yelling and screaming at night sometimes. I don't know what they're doing.
Well, one night we were here, it was a day and it kind of turned into evening like this. And myself and Cindy, who you've talked to, Katie and a couple of other people were all here. And we kind of, as we do, started kind of investigating. And we were in the area, and I don't even remember where it is here, but the area where all the children are buried. And there was a, a set of, or a group, I guess, of tombstones, and they all had pinwheels in front of them. And while we were standing there, we started doing this investigation, and one of those pinwheels started spinning. No breeze like right now, right? Maybe a little bit more than a little bit less than what there is right now. And it just started spinning. spinning, 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 spinning. So like we do, we're like, oh, that's awesome. Yay, you're here, you know, whatever. Okay, make it stop. If you're here, make it stop spinning. And it stops spinning. So we're like, okay, well, great, you're here. Can you make it do it again? And it starts spinning again. Okay, make it stop. And it stopped. And then like we're talking like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is amazing. Oh my gosh. And the pinwheel starts going backwards, spinning backwards. While we're like talking about it. It was the most insane experience I've ever had in my life, to sit there and watch this pinwheel just start spinning, stop spinning, start spinning, stop spinning, reverse spinning, stop spinning. It was just like, you want to talk about like how I know that the paranormal exists? Like that is a perfect example of how I know. Because like I said, there wasn't a breeze. There was no reason why it should be doing that. And there certainly wasn't any reason why it would go backwards, you know, while we were standing there. So, I mean, it's like, that's probably one of my favorite experiences, because there was probably four or five, maybe six of us that were there that all experienced the same thing and all kind of got to witness this pinwheel doing this. So, I mean, it's a neat story about being here, and kind of one that I always think of whenever I come to Hillside is you know, that experience at that gravesite. So it's kind of neat.
Spanning several acres and having one of the largest collections of Italian cypress trees, Hillside Cemetery is the final resting place for Redlands residents. Hillside Memorial is home to Civil War veterans, World War veterans, and a few celebrities like actor Gloria Holden Hoyt, a screen actor who starred in many films during Hollywood's golden age, like 1939's Dracula's Daughter. And like many other cemeteries, Hillside has a reputation for being haunted. If you ask Redlands residents what or who haunts Hillside, you'll more than likely get a few different answers. That's because Hillside has many stories, from animal sacrifices, floating orbs, to children's voices heard in the distance. But one thing's for sure. As soon as you step foot on the property, you look around and take notice of the eerie silence surrounding you, the tall trees shading most of the graves, you'll find it can conjure up just about any haunted scenario you can think of. Why some of us see ghosts and others don't is a complicated question, to say the least, and it's partly because it doesn't have just one answer. Science can't prove the existence of ghosts, and it also can't prove that ghosts don't exist. But one thing's for sure, there exists more than one reason why some people see ghosts, and they're not all paranormal related. Research suggests that the brain is sometimes the culprit for why we see things we might consider a ghost. There are many Hollywood movies written about ghosts of a loved one trying to communicate with someone they left behind, and normally that movie ends with some sort of resolve and peaceful transition to the afterlife. Although ghosts may not look like they do in Hollywood, some people believe they've been visited by loved ones that have passed away. And research suggests that this is the brain coping with trauma, a way to deal with painful and often confusing events.
I believe a majority, as far as ghosts is concerned, can be explained by natural things. For example, they did this test, and I don't remember what university it was, but it was with a robotic arm, and I guess the person had all the senses deprived or whatever, and he was controlling the arm. It would poke him, and what they did was they introduced a delay in the robotic arm, and when he poked him, it would be a delay, so the person got the impression that there was a ghost around them. Now, ghosts, there's typically three different things. People believe that they're dead people that are floating outside their body. I don't subscribe to that. But then there's the ones that are kind of like an echo or a replaying thing that they see. Like if they stay at a certain building, they say it's haunted. They see a little kid running around, and usually this kid will be dressed in the attire from like the 1800s or whatever. People see the same thing as regard to that. It's like an echo. I believe that's also grounded in science and will be later explained.
I know that there's, very definitive terms for these things: poltergeist versus haunting versus spirit, ghost, etc. I think it depends on whatever circles you walk in. Haunting for me is when there's an energy that's just trapped there. It's just trapped. It doesn't know where to go. It doesn't know what to do, and it's literally playing on a loop. It's just on repeat. So it's always going to be there. And some people will experience it and some people won't. That comes down to the difference in people. Some people are more attuned to these things, they can feel things, and other people just kind of go right on through life. They don't have these experiences, and maybe they're lucky.
There's all types of different kind of hauntings. There's intelligent haunts where it actually communicates back. The spirit will try to relay a message. And then there's residual haunt. Their spirit is home, and that's where they want to be, but they're at peace, deceased, but the spirit is still doing the same thing over and over again. It gets imprinted in the home. And a lot of these homes in this area are centuries old. And then there's haunts, I believe, because of my religious background, that they were never human. They were never, they don't have a soul. They're demonic. Tricksters. They can, I believe, from my upbringing, Catholic religion, that these tricksters can make you believe you're seeing a loved one, but it's not a loved one. It's something else.
Imagine a guy that lived in his house for 50 years. You know, his wife was there, his kids were raised there, he's got memories from his whole life that are in that location. And he passes. And it's his favorite place in the world. It's, you know, where he raised his family and his kids, and maybe he wants to stay there, or maybe he wants to visit there. You know, that's kind of the way that I look at things. And I don't think personally that spirits are necessarily tied to a location. They can be tied to a number of locations, right? And you know, somebody passes and maybe that house that I just talked about, or maybe their childhood home that they remember growing up in, or something like that. And those hauntings aren't necessarily something that's consistent or will be there forever per se, but maybe something that comes and goes. But on the other hand, I also think that there's a lot of hauntings that are either residual, like somebody getting killed in a certain location or hit by a car, and then you constantly, not constantly, but people will be driving down that street and they'll see somebody walking across that street in that location where that happened. They call that residual energy, which is, at the end of the day, that spirit's energy of that particular event that keeps playing over and over and over again. And it's the same process, right? I guess, without putting it a different way, of them doing that same thing. That's not the same as what I just talked about earlier, where you have somebody that's tied to a location because, say, they love that area or even hated that area sometimes, unfortunately. They're different. And that's where you get into talking about things like intelligent hauntings or spirits versus unintelligent and residual hauntings and spirits. So those are really two types of from when I think of like a house or a location that's haunted, those are a lot of the times that people talk about what they see. Are those two types?
I've seen an apparition twice in my life, and somebody was there each time and attested to what I saw. First time was, I believe in my late 20s. My friend James, he was opening this back section of this bar, because there was two sections of the bar. I've only had 3 beers. He hadn't drank anything. So I went to the back bar. I was talking to him as he was opening up, getting the various alcohols and stuff like that set up. So we were talking, and it was a square bar. It was a square, and it was kind of not too dark in there. It wasn't well lit, but it wasn't super black by any means. But so we're sitting there talking, and suddenly this, it appeared to be a woman, was just there at the corner of the bar, just there. Okay, I saw the top of her body. He saw the same thing I did, top of her body, top upper portion. She was blonde. She was a white woman, probably, I want to say mid-30s. She was blonde, and she had her mouth open like she wanted to say something. Nothing was coming out. We're like, what the hell? We look at her, we look at each other, and then this entity, whatever it was, it just disappeared into thin air. Initially, I mean, we both were shocked. We were like, what the heck? Initially, I thought it was a magician, an illusionist. So I was going to go over and congratulate her. Wow, that was a hell of a trick. So I go over there, and there was nobody there. He ran around the other side. There was no way she could have got out of our field of vision. No way. There was nobody there at all. It didn't scare me. It kind of scared him, because when I brought it up after that, he got kind of freaked out about it. Now, I heard that people saw other entities in this place. It's no longer there. It's a gas station now. It was called Angels Roadhouses in Yucaipa, and it was there for a long time. It was kind of like a biker bar. But anyways, I heard stories that people saw other things in there. And so it was weird. She just disappeared out of thin air. It didn't scare me. It was just more fascinating than anything. But that's all I can relate about that one. Now, I knew from other people claiming that they saw things. I knew the phenomenon was real. I don't know what it was, but there's no way to explain that. I can't explain that. You know, people just don't disappear in thin air. That's why I thought it was a magician. And I looked around for the rest of the night. I was thinking, man, this girl's playing a trick on us or something. I was like, nope, she was gone.
I actually had my own experience that turned me into a believer. I was alone in my home. My children were with their father, and my son had a little electric car. I actually heard it before I saw it. I saw this little car going down the hallway by itself on a carpet. So at first I thought, oh, I must have sat, it was a remote control car. So I thought I must have sat on the controller. So I took all the cushions off the couch and it wasn't there. And I said, what can possibly make that car move like that? And then it came back. And at that point I was scared because I couldn't explain it. And I waited outside for the kids to come home, and we searched all over for the remote control. We actually found it under his bed upstairs. So it was nowhere near me for it to have maybe set it off. I could never explain that. And then when I talked to other people about it, they told me their stories too. So I didn't feel alone anymore. And 10 years after that, that's when all the paranormal shows started coming out. So I actually started investigating before those shows started. So it was really nobody to talk to or to kind of reference what I experienced.
I was living with my girlfriend. We were in the city of, well, the town, well, I guess technically a city, Cabazon, by the Morongo Casino out there. And it's desert, you know, and we were in a brand new house. It was brand new. We were the only ones that lived there. We were renting it. And so, you know, there's no, you know, ancient, you know, old houses, associations, ghosts and stuff like that. It was a brand new house. And I was sleeping. We were both sleeping. The room was probably, it's not pitch black, but, you know, it was nighttime. It wasn't pitch black, but you could still make out things and stuff like that. I woke up. I saw a black figure. It looked like a humanoid. It didn't have no definitions in the face at all. It just looked like a black figure standing there. I jumped probably 3 feet off the bed, going for my weapon. She jumped. I scared her initially, and then she saw it, and that scared her. She let out a blood-curdling scream. And, you know, I went for a guy. I thought it was somebody broke in the house. That's what I thought it was initially. And I said, whoa, you better back the hell up. You know, I have my gun and everything. And that thing just disappeared out of thin air. It was gone. So we flipped on the lights. I'm looking, and I thought somebody had broken in. And I'm like, wow, they were like fast like a ninja or something, because it's gone now. And I had it dead to rights, you know, like bam. And it was just gone.
The belief in ghosts and the afterlife have been around well before anything was recorded. The Bible mentions ghosts, and so does ancient Egyptian culture. In classical Greece, Homer's Odyssey has reference to ghosts that would appear in the form of vapor. From then on, ghosts would appear all through different cultures. The belief in ghosts is common, so much so that it's used in works of fiction and other means of forms of entertainment. Ancient Romans believed in hauntings and even made reference to haunted houses. The Middle Ages carried these beliefs as well, but the world hasn't always been accepting of ghosts. At times, society looked down at those who believed. In Western society, and being in the information age, ghosts are being defined in different ways. Religion has its own definition, and so does Hollywood. Today, the study of the paranormal and ghosts are becoming more and more accepted.
I think in the past, well, when I first was intrigued and wanted my answers, nobody wanted to talk about it. 20 years ago, nobody wanted to talk about it. If you did, you were crazy, or you were delusional, or hallucinating. I think a lot of it is religious, that you don't mess with anything that's paranormal, because you can tap into something and not let it leave your life. You'll be stuck with it. You can get a attachment, a good one or a bad one. I think a lot of people fear that, and they don't want to mess with it. But then there's a group of people who all experience the same thing, different experiences, personal experiences, and they're seeking answers just like me. And we find each other. We find each other through the same locations. We hear that a place is haunted, and we kind of migrate there and find each other. So I think that's the common interest we have, is to find answers.
You know, I think that people are getting a lot more open-minded, and I think that more people are having experiences than aren't. And you can try as hard as you want to explain things away with science, but sometimes when you experience these things, there's no tangible reason for them. It is a feeling, and it's all-encompassing. And how do you explain a feeling? So I think people are becoming much more open-minded and freer to express themselves and maybe even talk about these things. I know that throughout the years, we've gotten a lot better at talking about and being open about mental illness and different mental disorders. That was something you couldn't do. That was something you couldn't do 5, 10 years ago, let alone 100 years ago. So maybe we are getting more open and evolved as a society to where we can talk about our experiences, whether they make sense or don't.
I think it has to do with a lot of the entertainment, though. They see the stuff on TV, they want to experience it, but they only want to have the scary stuff. But real paranormal investigating, it's not scary, and it's actually boring, because you're there for hours waiting for one little noise, or sometimes you don't get that evidence. You come home and you listen to those hours that you were there, and then you hear it. So it's nothing like TV. It's actually opposite.
Like when I was a kid, you know, it was just ghosts. You know, it was just ghosts. Like as a kid, that back then, I don't want to, date myself, but we didn't have any sort of tools, and it wasn't even understood. And I mean, gosh, the people that were doing paranormal investigation were sometimes ostracized because of it, right? Where today, fast forward, and now we've got, thanks to media and television, we've got a way for people to at least wrap their heads around the things that can be out there and are out there. So I think that's kind of helped things kind of go. And I mean, personally, I see over the next whatever amount of years, people will start to take it more seriously because it becomes more mainstream. And it's not that crazy person off in the corner that says they can see ghosts, right? So I think that change is kind of happening culturally, with us today. And that'll lend to, hopefully maybe someday people taking it more seriously and investing into doing those studies about it. Somebody had the brilliant idea to start making paranormal television shows. because everybody's always, it's something that inherently we're interested in because it's the unknown, and we like to think that grandma and grandpa can come down and visit us, or maybe in some ways, scaring us is just kind of something that interests us in the paranormal and wanting to understand that. Um, and not only with media and television and bringing that into the forefront, but the tools that we use, as much as, like I said, they're not necessarily perfect and tell us everything per se, but without technology, those tools wouldn't be here today either. I mean, there's lots of high tech tools that are coming out and that are out today that do things that we never thought you'd be able to do, as far as providing us tools to investigate, the paranormal, or what else is out there today. So, I mean, with both of those, with television and kind of technology kind of coming together, I'm hoping that in the future we'll start to see that kind of start to blend a little bit more. And I think that as that starts to happen, and we start to find ways that we can better communicate and really get some answers instead of a light lighting up, or a whisper that sounds like it might say a sentence, which is what we typically rely on. Once we can get to the point where we get that, that hard concrete evidence that, yeah, that happened and it's there and here's the proof of it, and it wasn't just a dust speck, and it wasn't just a bug that was flying there that looks like an orb, it is actually something that's paranormal. So that's what I'm looking forward to, is when we get to that point where that sort of blend happens between it, and then I think we'll see all kinds of changes in understanding the paranormal.
When people hear the term haunting, they tend to think of the dictionary's definition of haunting: visitation or inhabitation by a ghost. Is that what a haunting really is? Much of the latest research surrounding ghosts centers on the comparison of haunted and non-haunted locations. It's important to recognize the difference between haunted and non-haunted to understand what hauntings really are. The only way research becomes worth something is if the term haunting can be truly defined. Whatever the definition is, it's only a reflection of cultural traditions. People will naturally absorb what they repeatedly hear, even if they're unaware of that. Dictionary definitions are a prime example of this osmosis learning. It's why people associate spirits with being tied to hauntings, and the media, movies, TV shows only reiterate that position. Most people are under the assumption that a haunting involves a ghost, regardless of where the haunting is supposedly taking place. After a thorough examination, there are no reports of apparitions. With people associating ghosts or apparitions with hauntings, what does it really mean? Well, there are numerous associations with hauntings: unusual sounds, unusual sights, smells, unusual feelings, sometimes unusual pet reactions. In most cases, there is no reported sight of a ghost or apparition. Even if there is no apparition visibly present, a person could imply a presence if a location has all the hallmarks of a haunting. Instead of using the dictionary view that a ghost is needed for a haunting to be occurring, it's best to use scientific evidence and not cultural ones when wondering if something is haunted.
More than one person that sees the same thing. To me, that's a haunting. I believe everybody has their own personal experience of what they saw, and I believe that can't be taken away from you. Nobody can tell you you didn't see what you saw. So I believe that that's your own personal experience. But when two people see it at the same time, or a group of people, and can't be explained, that is a true haunting to me.
Okay, now there could be natural examples for that too. Like a chemical will make two people hallucinate at the same time. That could be plausible as well. But it's more believable if more than one person sees the same thing, So as far as one person saying, well, I saw this, you can do that all day long. You never get. That's why science doesn't accept it, and they're never gonna. Modern academia is never gonna accept it as a reality. They've had some pretty good explanations of naturally how these things occur with the brain and stuff like that are pretty believable. I'm pretty much a skeptic when it comes to that, but I know the phenomenon is real. It's definitely real. People are seeing something.
Well, you can't prove that they're not seeing something, that it's not real. I myself have never seen an apparition. I have never seen a ghost. Does that mean they don't exist? No, they just don't exist for me. You know, what I experience is something different than the next person, but it's the same as when you play a piece of music for two people. They're going to hear it differently. You know, they're going to have a different experience when they see a movie than can be explained. Why did one person not cry at the end and the other person did? Everybody's just different. It's just how we interpret different experiences, you know, individually. But I myself, never seen a ghost, doesn't mean that they're not there and that these people aren't seeing it. That to me is like a holy grail, to see, you know, I guess they call it a full body apparition or something, you know, to actually see a ghost. I would have the same reaction most people would, probably.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's real easy to think that you hear something in your house, you know, the something that goes bump in the night, and you automatically think that you've got a ghost, you know. But to me, a haunting is a lot more than that. You know, it's something that happens over time. It's something that happens more than once. It's something that you really can't explain, or you've tried to yourself prove that isn't there. Or, you know, hauntings can be anything from, you know, residual hauntings, people that have, you know, passed a certain way, and it just is a movie that replays over and over and over again that people see. Or it could be an intelligent haunting that could be somebody that lived there before, or maybe even somebody that was Native American that had some, you know, connection to that land. Um, it could be a family member, you know, and uh, the hauntings to me are something that's almost innate. You know, the people that I go into their homes, they just know throughout all of this time, all of these things that have happened that they can't explain, or reasons why things have happened they can't explain. To me, that's what really makes up a haunting is, you know, stuff just happens that you can't figure out, like a smoke alarm going off for no reason, or your microwave turning on, or, you know, which is one of the cases that we had, or you see a movement or hear a voice or something like that. So that's really what defines a haunting, and they can happen for all kinds of different reasons. There's not really a particular thing.
On February 4th, 1968, shortly before 7:30 p.m., an object like nothing seen before appeared over northern Redlands for approximately 2 to 3 minutes. Not long after, police lines were filled with concerned residents who witnessed the object looking for answers. According to Redlands Daily Facts, a local publication in Redlands, around 200 people witnessed the object and reported it to be about 50 feet in diameter with rows of windows. The object was seen then moving northwest. Shortly after, University of Redlands theology professor Dr. Philip Seff was contacted by a UFO study group from Colorado University, asking to look into the sighting. Seff was joined by other colleagues from Redlands University, and they conducted a 3-month study. Ultimately, the study ruled out natural phenomenon, but still wasn't sure what exactly these people witnessed. Today, that object that was seen by hundreds of witnesses still remains a mystery.
In fact, in Redlands, the city of Redlands, back in, I believe it was the late 60s or early 70s, there was a mass sighting of a craft which emanated noise, and people saw it. It was in broad daylight. A lot of people near the U of R saw it, and the actual professors and all that got together, and they wrote their report on it and stuff like that. And this was cited by multiple people. Now you could say, well, was this aircraft ours? Did it come from Norton Air Force Base? Did it, you know, is it from another world? And you have to think how sophisticated a technology would be to either come from another dimension or another world. It's pretty sophisticated technology. And in the event that one of these crashes or malfunctions has to be astronomically rare. You know what I'm saying? In history. That's why you don't really have them. You know, you hear about the crash of Roswell and stuff like that, but it has to be incredibly rare if these things, you know, malfunction or crash. And UFOs is, you know, UFO means unidentified flying object. Now they're called UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. That's what they call them now. But it's all unidentified. So does it mean it's from another world? No, not necessarily. You know, there are a lot of top secret projects going around with drones and stuff like that. The Air Force just revealed a top secret fighter plane the other day. So, you know, years ago, before all this technology, there were a lot of good photographs. There were photographs that were out there. Project Blue Book, which was sanctioned by the Air Force. They investigated. I think they had it was 5 to 10 cases out of hundreds of cases that was pretty legit. They had no explanation for. Their scientists looked at it and they had no explanation. It was like, you know, but it still doesn't make it. It's not. It could have been something natural, but they just didn't know. But people have seen these things for thousands of years. Thousands of years. Some ancient cultures worship these things. So it's also same with ghosts. It's definitely a real phenomena. I've seen a UFO twice. One was kind of unexplainable. I don't know what that was. It was before drones. One, they said it was a rocket the day after. And I just saw it. I was walking to the bus stop, and it was like this bright light up in the sky, and it kind of imploded. It didn't explode. It imploded. I thought it was weird. The people at the bus stop, the kids, we all saw it. Later on in the news, later on that evening, they said it was a rocket, and it was seen by all these people. The second time, I was with a girlfriend, and it was at nighttime, and I looked, and she saw the same thing. It was one like light, looked like a craft, and these other lights came out of it, swirled around, went back to it, and then that thing shot straight up. What was that? I have no idea. I don't even know if someone else saw that. Oh shit, that's 3 times I saw a UFO. One time too, I was driving up by Crafton Hills College, and you can find actually pictures and videos of this on YouTube. It was just a shiny object. I thought it was a balloon, somebody advertising for their business or whatever, a big balloon, and it was just sat there and it did not move. And I got closer and closer, and I saw it, and it just looked more weird as closer I got. But yeah, I don't know what that was. That was very strange. But other people did see that, and there's the videos and pictures and stuff like that.
Have you ever heard the term put yourself in their shoes? So you can truly understand what someone is feeling. It's then that you're able to feel emotional empathy for that person. Many need that reminder from time to time, but for a small percentage of people, they don't need that reminder at all. In fact, many times they don't have a choice. These people are known as empaths. They are people with the ability to feel another person's happiness or sadness or any strong emotion they might have, but there's a very distinct difference between being empathetic and being an empath. Empaths absorb the energy and feel it as their own, but it's not limited to just the feelings or energy from people who are alive. This ability can greatly assist in a paranormal investigation by helping identify the energy in that area, whether it's coming from someone living or deceased.
I've been told that I'm an empath. I've not trained myself as an empath. I've not taken classes necessarily as an empath or a psychic. But what an empath is you feel things that most people don't feel. And the best way that I can describe what I would say as being an empath is I can walk into a room after a heated discussion or an argument or a party and feel that residual energy that's been there, whether it was an hour ago or 2 seconds ago, right? There's just a sort of air of, stuff that I can feel. It's almost like this inert kind of inside my body kind of thing. And it kind of lent me to understand character and be a good judge of character and be able to kind of judge situations and people in certain ways. But from the paranormal standpoint, what Calpera and Katie has helped me do is kind of open up that and start to realize that empath ability, that innate ability that I have to kind of see things or understand things or feel things is something that is psychic, and something that I can take advantage of when I'm going out and doing investigations and really, tap into for myself, whether I understand it completely or not. It gives me that sort of springboard to go into an environment where maybe I can start to give them some answers. So from that standpoint, yeah, it's just kind of something that I've always had. It's something that I, it's just something that is there for me. It's something that I really can't explain, feeling that way, but I do get those feelings. And even things like auras and being able to see different auras coming off of people and those types of things is really what an empath is all about. And that's kind of what I have.
Well, this is where, I get a little shy about things. So I've had experiences since I was a child. calling them a name, paranormal, etc. I never thought to do that. It was just things that happened when I was a kid.
Are these things you can't explain? Is that like
Definitely cannot explain them. I wish I could. I wish I could say that it was a high fever, that I was sick, or maybe I really was just dreaming or I was asleep. But these things really did happen, and didn't really talk about them growing up because you don't want people to point or think you're not altogether there. But these things happen and there's no explanation. I don't have an explanation for them. I don't know if I would ever really call it a sixth sense or an intuition. It is just something that occurs. It's typically something physical, and it usually does have to do with like the squeezing. It's like this pressure in my chest, and it's my equilibrium's a little bit off. And I kind of have to like ground and secure myself, like, alrighty, stay frosty. What's going on here? Is that coming from the people that own the house? Is that coming from something in the house? I don't know, but I instantly become much more aware of my surroundings and really am paying attention to what's being said and everything that I'm feeling in the house. I'm definitely not at ease. Usually it goes away when I leave. And then again, because I am a very logical person, my first instinct is it's got to have an explanation. Sometimes, I'm dehydrated, a little bit dizzy, I'm dehydrated, maybe I need to eat. When these experiences come through and there's no denying what they are, it follows a very strict pattern. It's the same every single time. And I start to become distracted. It's very difficult to concentrate on whatever I'm doing or whoever's with me. The hearing in this ear starts to muffle more than it normally is. It starts to muffle, and it's almost like a ringing, and then it sounds like an old radio trying to be tuned. And I can hear that coming in, and okay, now there's no denying what's happening. It's happening. So I can try to ignore it. I've tried to ignore it. I fail. And then I start paying more attention. When I'm hearing, I'm getting chills, and then the pictures start in my head, like a flip book of pictures. So I'm seeing these images very, very quickly. And then I either just start blurting it out, what it is that I'm seeing, or sometimes I'm lucky enough, I get letters, I get names, I get colors, I get certain different things, or I have to sit there and think about what I just experienced and try to make sense of it. And it's not always easy.
Do I attract this kind of stuff? It's a possibility, because I believe when you investigate this stuff and you take it seriously and it's your life's passion, like it is with me, as far as the paranormal, the occult, ancient history, religion, secret societies, all this stuff, I believe that your third eye, your pineal gland, is more developed than the average person, and they're probably more susceptible to encountering things like this. It's a distinct possibility.
Tourism can be a very positive thing. It provides jobs, opportunities for shops, hotels, restaurants, merchandising, and all this puts money back into the city. But sometimes it depends on why people come to visit. For the city of Redlands, a quiet small city that prides itself on just that, has very little to gain from having allegedly haunted places. In fact, in some cases, it's only been an inconvenience. Mariposa Elementary has been trying to shake off its ghost story for quite some time, mostly due to people visiting the school after hours, which may or may not have contributed to the local police department setting up security cameras, which is why it's understandable why some residents don't care much for the haunted attractions.
Well, there's other places I think that are such as a hotel, a haunted hotel or something like that can bring in more revenue if they do advertise that or whatever, or the word gets out, or if it's on a documentary or something like that and people heard about it, like, oh wow, like the place they shot the Shining, the movie The Shining, is that haunted? People believe it's haunted. You can capitalize on it. I don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, but it definitely goes on. Now my friend Jaime, he went to Roswell. I've never been there, but he said don't waste your time. So it's all desert, and it's just there's people that try to go out and find the crash site, and all that, and that's cool. But probably need to be nothing there, man. But
I don't know. I think they're just afraid of a lot of people come here to do a lot of paranormal investigating. And since a lot of these old homes are privately owned now, they don't want people coming around into their area, their yard.
The historical part of Redlands is probably very much still run by the old money. That doesn't want to tarnish the reputation. But for those of us that have been here for a long time, it's an undeniable history. It's an undeniable experience. So I think we're actually diminishing part of Redlands' charm by trying to keep it quiet, that it's not really here, but it is.
The city of Redlands is home to quite a few haunted locations, or at least that's what many people believe to be true. Redlands is over 130 years old, and the stories of hauntings and ghosts have been swirling around this town for decades. And as this small town progresses, updating its businesses, new developments, and new residents, the horror stories that once haunted this small town will likely never be forgotten.